Hey guys, this is RolloutReviews with RolloutReviews bringing you a Bionicle review. What better way to kick these off than by starting with the first Bionicle set I ever got, back almost 14 years ago. Set number 8534, Tahu, Toa of Fire. Now, this set was released in 2001 and contains 33 pieces. Tahu, and all of the Toamata, for that matter, have a very simplistic design. But that simplicity leads to them being very memorable and iconic. You see, a story quite like Bionicle had never really been told before. A setting quite like the one Bionicle explored had never really been explored. You have 6 futuristic, biomechanical, elemental heroes with mystical masks of power on a mysterious, ancient, and tribal island of Madanui. Whether that story came first, or this design came first, they reflect each other very, very well, I think. You have a very complex-looking structure. His body has tons of pistons and gears. Then you have his very streamlined, and like I said, tribal-looking mask and weapon. At the time of release, Tahu was in the standard medium price point range of about $7. We call these canister sets because back then they were quite literally packaged in plastic cylindrical tubes, or canisters. Unfortunately, his canister is one I do not own anymore. Now, this figure being about 7 inches tall, only having 33 pieces, and still retaining that $7 price point, you can imagine that some aspects of the design were sacrificed for others. We'll take a look at this figure starting from the bottom up. He's got ball joints in his ankles, which is nice, but you'll notice that his leg is one solid piece. This was something very misleading in a lot of the 2001 promotional artwork, because a lot of those pictures showed these figures boasting a lot more articulation than they could actually muster. It's got a ball joint up here, and it's attached to the body via this connection piece, which is plugged into an axle, meaning it can't move unless you detach it and reattach it at a 90-degree point. You can also attach it on this alternate axle port and get this going on here, but it looks slightly awkward. The torso is once again one solid piece, despite how it looks. It gives off the impression that there might be some movement in the waist, but there isn't. He's got this ball accent on his chest. I suppose it's his armor? I'm not really sure, but it's sort of an iconic part of Tahu's design, so I've come not to question it. His shoulders are locked in place. At least his left shoulder here. The other one is attached via a gear function that we'll take a look at here in a minute. This one is attached under the same principle as his leg. To get it to move any further forward, you have to reattach it at a 90-degree point. It is attached at a ball joint up here, however, so that's not too much of a problem. This arm is the same exact part as his leg, flipped upside down, and on the end you have this hand piece, which I think debuted with the earlier Robo-Riders from the previous year. It's essentially on a ball joint here, so you can get quite a bit of expression, but it can lock in place at certain points. So that's kind of cool. The other arm is completely different, but once again, does not have any articulation. It looks like there's a joint there, but it's locked in place. However, this allows him to wield his fire sword. I absolutely love the design of this. It's a great combination of technical and tribal simplicity. Looks really, really cool. Now, before we take a look at his gear function, let's take a closer look behind that mask. Tahu uses the Great Kanohi How Mask of Shielding, which allows him to generate force fields around himself and allies. It's got a very good design, definitely one of the better in the series. It was so memorable, in fact, that it was used as the mascot for Bionicle until the later years. It was also used as the symbol for the Great Spirit, Matanui. It's got a peg back here that allows it to attach to the underlying face. Honestly, I think this face design looks rather silly with the way the mouth is designed. It's got this translucent piece back here, which pegs through the front with a snap very tightly. It's very difficult to remove, but allows him some light piping. Very resilient light piping. Now you'll notice back here it's attached via another axle, which means it cannot move. This is the biggest downfall of the Toa Mata and the Toa Nuva. They have no neck articulation, which really makes them lacking in expression, I feel. You have a couple options. You can have them looking forward, you can detach it, reattach it at a 90-degree point and have them looking awkwardly either left or right, or you can remove the axle and reattach it at this axle port back here, allowing the Toa to look upward, once again, in a very awkward manner. Fortunately, this is LEGO, and the beauty of LEGO is customization. There are plenty of ways to alter this design and allow head movement. Many of those ways I highly recommend. Now, like I said, the mask has a peg here, and it just plugs into the mouth, simply enough. It's also very easy to remove, but that is not without reason. In the early years, nearly every single Bionicle set featured a Kanohi mask and an attack function. Even the Rahi beasts of the island were administered infected Kanohi by the Master of Shadows, Makuta. These masks allowed him to control their powerful attack functions and use them to knock the masks off of the Toa, leaving them weak and powerless against him. Each of the Toa had their own attack function to both defend themselves and to knock those infected masks off of the Rahi, leaving them free of Makuta's power. Tahu has a gear on his back that spins a gear within his arm joint. It allows his fire sword to swing up and down. A very cool function and a very cool play scheme. It was kind of a game. You tried to knock the mask off of your opponent, and they tried to knock the mask off of your figure. This, unfortunately, was sort of forgotten in the later years of Bionicle, for the better or the worse. The gear functions could sometimes be rather loose, making the Toa unable to hold certain poses. The Toa Nuva in the following year implemented a very simple gear locking mechanism that was very useful, but for these guys you sort of have to rely on pushing the bushings and gears together, providing enough friction for them to hold their arms up. Especially important with Tahu, so that he can attain his iconic poster battle cry. Any opinions I have on this guy are obviously plagued in massive amounts of nostalgia. That said, I still think it's a very fun toy and a very good LEGO set. What it lacks in articulation, it definitely makes up for in style and fun. So that is about it, guys, and this is RolloutReviews, signing off.